Hi, welcome to Workplace at the River, where we transform lives at the workplace. My name is Joel, and I'm part of the team at Workplace at the River, and I'd like to welcome you to our Workplace at the River Business Talks, Thursday Business Talks. This happens every Thursday at 7 p.m. We've got a very interesting topic today, and I thank so many of you here for joining us this evening. But before we go into the topic, why don't we just play a simple icebreaker, a simple game, just to hear a feel of the audience about you guys, how you guys are feeling right now. So in the area of data and storage, all right? So if I can have the question up on screen, what is one issue you face with data storage? All right, so it could be the area of space, security, accessibility. This week is special. We won't do a Mentimeter thing if you've joined us before, but drop your questions in the chat. If you're using a computer or even a mobile device, it should be the bottom of your screen. Click on the chat. So do share with us what is one issue you face with data storage. Not enough space. Yeah, that's for me. Speed. All right. Anyone else? Go ahead and drop your thoughts. Deciding on the form of data storage. You keep losing them. Aha. That means your storage device is either too small or too insignificant. Anyone else? Someone here says, my spouse dropped our hard disk. Space. Yeah, space is very important. Do you go, is it 1 terabyte, 2 terabytes, 4, and then 8? 8 is like double the size. How big is enough? Good question. Keep forgetting where I saved it. Yeah, thank you all for all your responses. I'm sure storage is a very big thing, but today's speaker is going to focus on not just storage in terms of hard disk or our flash drive, but big data storage in terms of your business, the needs of your company. If there are a group of people, how do you deal with storage, in terms of space, in terms of security, and all that kind of stuff, and even costing as well. All right, so without further ado, I'd like to invite the speaker for today. But if you've got any further questions for the speaker, do drop it at our online link, tiny.cc/askwater. And if you'd like to ask the questions, you can drop it to myself or one of the co-hosts, and they will share the questions with me, and we would be glad to answer your questions. Or you could drop it to this link, tiny.cc/askwater, and even there you can make your questions anonymous. You can type in more details as well, so that we can address your questions confidentially as well as in more detail. So do go ahead and drop your questions there. And without further ado, I would like to invite our speaker for today. His name is Noel Teng. He's a technology specialist. He will talk a little bit about himself, but he will be talking about powerful and affordable storage for your business data. Over to you, Noel.
Thank you, Joel. Thank you. Welcome, everyone. It's so good to be here, to be able to share. Right, the topic of my session today is powerful and affordable storage for your business data. Obviously, many people these days have too much data, as some of the responses were showing. Right, we can never get enough of storage space. Right. A bit about myself. I used to work for Microsoft Malaysia for 15 years. And the last 5 years, I've been supporting the Microsoft regional team out of Singapore, right, covering Australia, New Zealand, all the way to India. And also for those of you who want to reach out to me even after, right, my contact details are on the left. And I'm sure some of you have seen this particular article by The Economist that says that the world's most valuable resource is no longer oil, but data. Right, it's obvious why, right? And I'm sure some of you probably also know that during this current period, right, we need to reskill ourselves, right? And this McKinsey article, I think, is so apt, all right, that says to emerge stronger from COVID-19 crisis, companies should start reskilling their workforce. I believe that all these should come to a personal level, right? The fact that you are here in this session, all right, I believe you are trying to reskill yourself, and you're trying to do that now, right? So, and Microsoft is doing their part as well, especially for their partners. So Microsoft Inspire is the largest, if you want, partner event ever. And this year around, it's going to be an all digital event, and it's complimentary. So you can sign up button here when you get my deck. If you want my deck, just circle back to me as well. And of course, for the technical folks in the session, you can also join Microsoft Ignite in September. Right? This particular one has not opened for registration yet, but I believe within the next couple of months they will. And just like Inspire is also complimentary, right? So thank you for joining this session, all right? And this is something that's very close to my own heart, right? By Benjamin Franklin. Failing to plan is planning to fail. So I believe that it's important for us to also think from a disaster perspective, all right? Always plan for the fact that no plan ever goes according to plan, right? So it's key that we never leave all our plans into one single execution, right? Especially in IT, we always believe we need to have a disaster recovery plan, right? But it's important to also note that COVID-19 has brought a lot of sad news to us, right? We've seen the state of the country's economy. Even at a global level, many countries are suffering. And not to mention also for people and communities, right? There's been a growing concern that people are worried about their jobs and so forth. But there's also a bright side to that. And I'm excited, right, and grateful at the same time. Our environment seems to be rebuilding itself, rejuvenating if you want. And of course, also, we see people being able to spend more with their families, and the fact that many of us are eating in more, right? I think generally our health have benefited from that. And of course, this article in the UK talks about how by not making people go to the office and allowing people to work from home, they are able to save like 11 billion road miles and cut emissions significantly. So these are some of the great, exciting things that's happening. But it's also a lot of sad news, right? As you can see from this particular assessment, some companies are disastrously affected. So it's not surprising that 8.5% of them are in such a state. And of course, there's also about a quarter of them in very severe situation, and also 27% sitting in the middle, which is not much better. All in all, we are seeing about 60% reporting severe impacts. And it's not surprising, if you want, that Hertz, one of the largest car rental companies, has filed for bankruptcy. So some of these things are impacting the world today, and including even at the local front, we see tourism operators in trouble, right? And this is not even taking into consideration wave 2 and wave 3 of COVID-19, which we are probably expecting, right, starting in the next few weeks. And from a sporting perspective, we are also seeing the Tokyo 2020, which is supposed to be starting very soon, affected. And if it does get cancelled, and with any support that they're getting, hopefully it doesn't get cancelled but postponed, right? Otherwise, a lot of people will probably lose their jobs, right? And as you can see, the world economy is really significantly affected. But the impact of COVID-19 hasn't been limited to just, if you want, threats to our lives. It's also been elevating extortion scams and so forth, as reported by FBI. So if you look at this Trend Micro stats, right, there's about 907,000 total spam relating to COVID-19. And in terms of spam, there's been a 220 times increase, if you want, just between February and March. Situation is very, very intense, even in the cyber world, if you want. And not to mention that if you've been affected by this malware, the system will not be able to boot, which means that you can't use it at all. But there's also good news. All right, just recently, a couple of months ago, this particular scam group that is based out of Calcutta, all right, was actually caught. All right. So, white hat hacker, if you want, actually hacked into their CCTV camera and recorded many hours of them planning and scheming and so forth. So this guy has actually managed to expose this scam in India. So we can take pride that justice does prevail at some point. From an IT front, we're starting to see a number of different converging, if you want. From a storage perspective, there is this hyper-converge, and of course, it's also a cloud trend. And some of the older technology are being shipped out, if you want, that's older than 10 years, because they are no longer secure, if you want, and on top of that, not compliant and potentially missing out on all the great innovation, right, that is available in the latest. And of course, with the COVID-19 impact from a security and cybersecurity perspective, there's a lot of concern. So Jesse Hempel made a very good point, right? It goes something like, security is like oxygen. When you have it, you don't notice it. But when it's gone, you don't survive long. So apt, because truly, if security left your data and exposed your data, you can be assured that in no time, someone would steal it and expose it and share it into the dark web, as they call it. Now, one of the other trends that's taking hold, if you want, is many organizations are starting to move their people to a remote work perspective. And this actually brings up an extra level of concern, if you want. And from a permanent work perspective, we are seeing people like Facebook, Twitter, even our local PNB, right, has said that they are going to move some people into their home work environment permanently. And not to mention, some of them are starting to do that throughout the rest of this year, like American Express, Visa, and even Google. So you can see that there's a massive shift, but there is hope, all right? Anyone that understands this Maslow hierarchy of needs will soon realize that the bottom two layers, like the psychological needs and the safety needs, which make up the basic needs, are the most important two areas, right? And I'm going to tell you a little bit about how you can transform yourself and your organization to capitalize this particular area. But before I do that, I want to show you a couple of good news, if you want. First and foremost, an article that just came out recently. COVID-19 pandemic created 2 new Malaysian billionaires. I'm sure some of you saw this article, right? So this is where the rubber gloves industry has prospered, and many of these companies are based in Malaysia because we are probably one of the largest producer of rubber, right? And this particular company that I want to quote is called Supermax, all right? Due to the COVID-19, you can see there's a massive increase, if you want, in demand for protective gear, all right? And of course, this protective gear they're talking about are rubber gloves. But there is also some bad news. I'm sure many of you seen this article from about AirAsia laying off their people, right? Flights stop, countries close their borders, lives are at risk, so they can't continue to fly as per normal. But guess what? People like Tony don't stand still and see their company being decimated, right? So in a very short time, they are converting or transforming the organization into an agriculture e-commerce platform called Our Farm. Right? So you could say that they are trying to follow Alibaba, maybe they're creating a virtual farm, but really, if you think about it very carefully, it's about solving some basic needs of all of us, all right? So do you think there's any correlation, if you want, between AirAsia laying off their people to AirAsia launching this particular platform? Right? And I can assure you, if you think a little bit deeper, there is a lot of correlation. Right? And not to mention also for this particular organization, they are the largest electric vehicle company in China. Right? Over a couple of months, early this year, they transformed their company to be the largest medical mask company in the world, BYD Auto. Right? And for those of you who haven't yet noticed, I got this little finger with the circle that is pressing, right, like a button, right? So you can click on that to get more information about all this information that I've shared. These are references, if you want. I believe in highlighting the accuracy in my sharing. So this is an important part of it. So where do you think these organizations fit, right? So starting from the bottom, we have the most important of all, right? The psychological needs, the safety needs, and then of course we have then the next most important, we have like the belonging and love needs, and of course the esteem needs, and finally we have the self-actualization. Where do these companies fit into the picture? If you look at Supermax, they fit into safety. AirAsia fits into the psychological needs. And if you think a bit more, how does AirAsia fit into the psychological needs? They're providing a platform, right? What is a platform? This platform brings together farmers and people in the food ecosystem, if you want, or the supply chain, right? Providing the ability to get food over to consumers like us, right? So I call it the farm to table scenario. So AirAsia is trying to replat themselves or trying to reposition themselves to be a key player to provide this link, if you want. So from a business perspective, right, according to Maslow, there's also been a lot of impact. So access to funds for cash flow purposes, the supply chain, their applications and data, right? And of course, we believe that it's important for organizations to focus on their core competencies and of course, even continuously improve. And with that transformation, you saw that example that I shared, and also increasing marketing and awareness so that people know what their product and so forth. So going online into an e-commerce space gives them that particular capability. And some of you may have heard of this thing called digital marketing, right? So all of these combining reducing risk and threat, reducing spending and overhead, the cost of goods, maintaining profitability, these are all important. So I have a video to share with you, and you may have actually seen it already in WhatsApp sharing and so forth, but I thought maybe a few seconds up to a minute of this video might be useful for you.
The world as we know it has changed forever. We can clearly define a pre-corona world and a post-corona world. And in this video, what I'm going to do is, I'm going to walk you through a few important concepts. What are the top 20 affected industries? If you happen to be in one of those 20 industries, it's time for you to start making those shifts and reinventing yourself. I'm going to reveal to you the 13 things that has completely changed in the world and it is going to change forever. And I'm also going to share with you the 15 industries that are going to be winning in the post-corona world. And at the end of it, I'm going to give all of you a $97 gift. So please watch this video till the end very closely, because this is going to be one of the most important videos that you'd ever see in your life. Now, if you're watching this video on my YouTube channel, please subscribe to my channel, please hit the bell button, and also give a like on this particular video so that you are connected with me. And if you're watching this on Facebook, I want you to just type in the comment box, eager to learn. Just type eager to learn, because if you're eager to learn, you will take a lot of notes. You will note down what are the shifts that you need to make in your life, in your business, for you to be more relevant in the future and for you to be on the winning side of this game. So having said, let's jump into it. There are 5 important concepts that I want to share with you. The first concept I want to share with you is that the world has changed forever. And I always say this, the world was like this, and now we are here in terms of social distancing and so on. And once the world comes back, it's not going to go back here. It'll be somewhere only in between or somewhere lower, because everything has changed. The way that we look at things have changed, and I'll prove it to you in today's video. The second thing is adaptation is the key. If you're very rigid in your thinking and your thought process, and if you're not quick to make those changes and decisions in your life and in your business, you're going to be on the losing side. And number 3 is, it is not survival of the fittest, it is survival of the quickest. The faster you can adapt yourself, the better it is for you. Okay, whether it be a job, 47 million jobs have been lost in the US just in the first few days of the coronavirus impacting, and now the recession is getting into full swing mode. So what you need to do at this stage is, you need to be quick, survival of the quickest, in terms of quick decision making, quick action taking, quick learning. And now the world is moving into a mode of forced entrepreneurship. Whether you like it or not, you have to become an entrepreneur. Yeah, many people who felt that education is the most important thing in this world, getting degrees is the most important thing in this world, getting a safe and secure job in a top MNC is the most important thing in the world, they are the ones who have been hit really bad, including the top level CEOs. I would say vice presidents, CEOs will be making some very, very tough decisions. Okay, the bottom end of the pyramid is definitely affected. There's no doubts about it. But even the mid and high level aspects of the pyramid are getting those pink slips. So what I'm here to tell you is that this is a very interesting time in the world where you need to understand where to position yourself. Okay, so and entrepreneurship is one of the best stepping stones for you to have more control over your own life, because in spite of you working in a corporate organization for 10, 15, 20 years, and if something like this falls on you, I mean, what are you going to do? You have those EMIs going, you got so many, your family to take care of, so many things where you depended completely on the corporation to take care of you. Now we are moving into that era of forced entrepreneurship, because even the corporation does not know how to save its people. So survival of the quickest, forced entrepreneurship. And number 5, I want to say that this is an ego slap by nature. So we got to be living more conscious life. So having said that, let's jump into the 20 industries that are affected. Okay, 20 industries that are affected. Let's start with it one by one. The first one is the job market. As all of you know, I mentioned this. Job market is in a very serious situation right now globally, because even I know, I have employees working for me. I have friends who are running companies of 300 people, and they are mass giving pink slips, because there's no other way to sustain, because there is no inflow, there's no revenues coming in. And how can they pay people when there are no revenues coming in, unless you're in an industry where it is not affected? So the job market is the first industry that is hugely affected, which is why I said forced entrepreneurship. The second industry which is hugely affected is the retail industry, and many of you may already know this. Like, nobody's going outside and buying. The shopping malls, the retail businesses, where you had a shop and people have to come and buy from you, that's completely gone. Including Amazon, online retail also is right now in a precarious condition right now until things get better, right? So retail is also gone. Travel industry is completely gone. Airline industry, like, nobody's traveling these days. You go and look at airports, how they're going to be. There's nobody traveling these days. And it's a multi-trillion-dollar industry that has gone down. Number 4 is the tourism industry is also gone. Who wants to go for vacations at this time? Nobody's going to invest even 1 rupee in going for vacation. So if you're in that sector, it's time to start making those shifts. Number 5 is the hospitality industry, the hotels and the 5-star hotels. In fact, just before the lockdowns and all of that happened, we did a seminar in Delhi, and I was seeing nobody's in hotels. The hotel rates have dropped by 40-50%, and 5-star hotels sitting on big inventory, big payroll, big expenses on a day-to-day basis, operational expense on a day-to-day basis. Now imagine if there's nobody going into hotels, what kind of impact it will have in the entire supply chain. So that's huge. Number 6 is the automotive industry. Nobody's driving and going out these days, and that doesn't mean that it's not going to go back, but it is not going to go back to normal. People are not going to make those big decisions on buying fancy cars and stuff. Okay, like, people may have those fancy cars, but what's the use of it right now when you cannot really go out? Okay, and having said that, even considering coronavirus and all these things get settled down, but still it's not going to go back to the way that it was, because the entire job culture also has changed. I'm going to come to that. Okay, the way the work is going to be changed. Cinema industry is dead. Forget about you going to a mall and sitting in a cinema hall, because nobody's going to go anymore. Okay, in fact, there are governments who put rules that you should not go and sit in cinemas, because that's where the spreading and all of that can happen. So that is also gone right now. Cinema industry. So box office, ticket, the movie industry is definitely impacted because of this one thing here. Okay, next one is, let's look at logistics industries. Logistic industries, not all of them, but it has been impacted to such way, depending on what kind of logistics it is. Looking at food supplies and medical supplies, all of that, those are on track, because that's only going to feed the entire engine of the society right now, where people are not doing other things. They need the essentials of the basics of life, like food, vegetables and all that stuff. That part of logistics will not get affected, but other logistics, which is directly impacting the other industries, are going to get majorly affected, and you're seeing that already. Local transportation is gone. Ubers and Olas and all these things. I mean, it's completely gone. Imagine if you're an Uber, Ola driver, or if you know somebody who's like that, and now they cannot do anything. There's no other way to create an income for themselves. Okay, so again, it's time to reinvent. Number 10 is the restaurant business is also gone. Who's going to go and eat in restaurants now? In fact, home food is even more these days. Okay, people are eating more home food these days, which is actually good. It's more healthy. It is like a forced way of becoming more healthy. Number 11 is the luxury products. That industry is also booming. Like, why are people going to be buying these high-flying luxury products when they need the basic essentials of life? And I feel this entire situation has leveled the field. Whether you are a super rich person or you are middle class person, I mean, you need the basic essentials of life. Whether you're a movie star, cricket star, whatever superstar that you may be, and even a normal person sitting at home, you are still looking for those basic needs to be met on a daily basis. So that level playing field has happened. Number 12 is live sports. Live sports is gone. I mean, imagine, see the amount of the billions of rupees or dollars that were spent into watching live matches, the IPLs, and look at just think about the cricketers right now. What would be going through their mind? They will be thinking about reinventing themselves because their entire career was dependent on playing a live match. Okay, and all the revenues, all that bidding that happens in an IPL. I mean, all sports personalities, not just cricket. I'm talking about all sports globally. It has been affected. Okay. Number 13 is real estate has been affected. So when real estate is affected, like nobody's buying, no people are looking only for the essentials. Yes, so this is also an industry. Having said that, some of the smart people or investors will be investing at this point of time, okay, and looking at the future. And oil and gas has been affected also. Who's going to be who's going and filling petrol in their cars? No one. Okay, so that entire supply chain of getting oil and gas is affected. Number 15, the construction industry is affected. Number 16 is the film industry, like I mentioned, is affected. Number 17 is events and conferences. If you're doing large events and conferences, that is also affected because yes, even though it may come back to normal, it's not going to be like normal before because of the social distancing that has gone into the DNA of the society now. Number 18 is the tech and gadgets. Like I'm talking about consoles, gaming consoles. You look at some of these big companies like Apple and Samsung, they have cut down, their production has got affected hugely. Even though the need to buy phones will be there, but it's not going to be like before. It's definitely not going to be there. It's a boom, moving in the downward direction there. Number 19 is automobile manufacturing. Okay, because there are not many people who are going to be going and driving cars and stuff like that. Like before, people who have 2-3 cars, they may decide, why do they need so many cars? Let them just settle with just 1 or 2. There's a whole transformation that's going to happen in the automobile manufacturing industry also. And number 20 is the fintech investing and so on. There is some disruption that's happening over there. So anyway, these are the industries which are most affected.
So what I want to do next is just to go through a couple of these core areas. Focus on core competencies and reducing risks and threats. So this particular article I picked up just only on Grab, right, showed us the focus of Grab in terms of going back to their core competencies, right? Although they did not face any capital constraints, they were very concerned that the way things are going, it may not be coming to an end anytime soon. And of course, also, right, the importance, if you want, to stay focused. So you can see that even big success companies need to stay focused. And the dangers of not staying focused could be very, very devastating. Of course, this particular plan, if you want, the short-term economic recovery plan that the government has released, has also provided some really, really good guidelines on how, as a business person, you may be able to take advantage of some of these key areas. Now, of course, many of you will have also seen this article saying that many government services are fully operational. So at least they potentially could be customers. And of course, also about how slow the economy is going to recover. The key word, if you want, is slow, right? So out of that, right, with the RMCO terminology, right, I came up with the following, where each one of us could help our country, right? Reboot, meaning using our local products, if you want, manage the COVID-19 threat even within our family and our personal level, making sure it doesn't spread, and of course, C for looking out for the cybercrime economy that's growing beyond $1 trillion a year. And of course, to optimize and do more with what we have, saving money and preparing for the exit when it comes. So from a reboot perspective, it's important that each one of us start buying local, do our part to support the economy. And of course, also from a learning perspective, I started sharing this with some of mine who are in the company secretary business, to teach them how to learn and grow internationally so that we can actually tap on foreign investments. Of course, in my own company, I'm organizing this Work From Home 2020 conference next week on the 25th, so that we get a chance to teach the people locally and regionally as well. And of course, I'm also doing a cyber security session this Saturday, and I'm teaching people how to do simple things like enabling two-factor authentication, even with WhatsApp and so on. But it's also important to note that in order for us to well in the business world, we need to have the right behavioral traits, if you want, to become a trusted advisor. So there are 3 specific ones that I find particularly useful. And a lot of these will be linked to the data storage capability that I talked about. From a long-term perspective, putting customers' interests first, and of course, genuinely interested in customers and businesses, right? So each one of these slides will spell out, if you want, from a long-term focus perspective, make sure that we touch base with customers regularly. But don't think of them as deals and opportunities. But think of them as people that are important in our lives that we need to focus and give them time and so forth. Be genuinely interested in them and not just their business. So from a work from home solution perspective, there are 3 key points I always highlight to people, right? My customers, my partners, and so forth. Make sure it's minimalistic, which means you just have enough, and be pragmatic about the situation. And it needs to be cost effective. Of course, those elements like simple to set up, secure, affordable, performance, reliability, being non-stop, grow as you need is very important. So these things are probably the same attributes that you'll find that will help you in your business when it comes to your data storage. So 3 key elements from work from home, making sure that we can get work done, all right, from a connection perspective, secure connection back to get through to the applicants. And we have 3 elements that we normally focus on. And that takes us, if you want, to 7 key pillars that we talk to our customers with, as well as what we teach our partners. From having the right tools, if you want, in the home perspective with Windows 10 Pro and Autopilot, all the way to having the right management tool with Windows Admin Center and having built-in capabilities in many of the different solutions, so that you don't actually have to pay anything more if you want. Get it all together as much as possible. And the bit on storage is the 7th, right? The number 7. So our key partners, people like Dell EMC, HP, Lenovo, and together with Microsoft, we provide very powerful storage solutions. It's easy to set up, secure, with great support, affordable, and so on. So it also scales up and scales out. That means it can grow as you need, as big as you need. And of course, these are the key elements we want. The growth factor from 2 to 16 nodes, having the built-in cache with built-in DR, disaster recovery, as I mentioned earlier. So therefore, the benefits to customers are those, right, with HA, high performance, and yet have cost savings to the customer. And these are some local benchmarking that we did. As you can see, even with 2 server nodes performance, we can get in excess of 500,000 IOPS, which is actually very, very high. And of course, with 12 server nodes, we can go all the way to 13.7 million IOPS. And this is with SQL Server, one of our flagship database solutions. We can get 55.7 million transactions per minute using a very similar configuration as the previous slide. And of course, many of this, all right, needs to understand, or rather we need to understand some of this terminology in order for us to best leverage the technology. So I compiled a list for you from virtualization to DR to hyperconverged and so forth. So this is something for you to take through on your own. And of the technology that I've covered off are those on the right. Over back to you, Joel. Thank you.
All right, thank you for that, Noel. Wow, you covered a lot of slides. I thought you would take a little bit more time, but thanks for that. I think it was very informative. Thanks for the content just now. If you've got any questions, you in the audience, go ahead and drop it. You can either PM one of us here in this Zoom chat, or you can go ahead to the link, tiny.cc/askwater, and I'll be happy to look at your questions and answer them. All right. So, Noel, as you were talking just now, you mentioned something about slow. Basically, the economy is going to rebound quite slow. So, I mean, nobody knows where we are at right now. And for those of you who saw the video, things before or pre-MCO or pre-COVID-19 and post-COVID-19 are very different. So, in terms of slow, what is the market feel in terms of how slow, and also how long will this slowness be? So that we can prepare ourselves, so that we can brace ourselves, because I think For many of us here in Malaysia, when we got the announcement by our PM, it's always 2 weeks, 2 weeks, 2 weeks. So after a while, we lose our patience. So I think the question is like, how long will this slowness be, and how long will it take for us to kind of get back on our feet? Yeah.
I think there are multiple, aspects that we need to think about from a slow perspective. I think many of us are impatient to get back to the pre-MCO pace, if that's the right way to describe it. But the problem is because of many supply chains have been disrupted, right? Even if you think of it from a work from home perspective, many things that we used to be able to do, we can't do, or we are too fearful to do. Like, say, for example, my wife's been complaining, if you go out for dinner with a family, you have to sit apart, there's only 4 people per table, right? I think the slow part is going to be how people cope with all these changes, right? There's still a lot of uncertainty of what we can do completely, right? Like, for example, traveling interstate, right? Someone was saying, for the car to be able to go interstate, everyone must come from the same family. But you can't have people from different families pulled together into a car to go interstate. So there's that uncertainty, if you want, that's creating a lot of that slowness, if you want. It's not just about maybe cash flow crunch by companies and so forth, right? And as a result, also, there's a lot of fear of foreign companies coming into the country, right? So it's quite complex, if you want. But when I poll my partners, if you want, to find out how slow is slow, some businesses are saying there's no business at all. Okay, and they don't know how long they're going to be able to keep going at this rate. Right? There's rental to be paid, there's wages to be paid. Right? The government is saying that you cannot let the people go, you have to keep paying them, but yet there's no business. But there are the flip side, and I have some partners, right, that is doing very, very well. Right? So there is actually 2 very distinct opposite tracks, if you want, that's happening. So hopefully that answers some parts of your questions, Joe.
Oh, okay. Yeah, thanks for that. Thanks for answering that question. In this time of COVID-19, everybody's working from home. You did mention, that question, that statement that people are working from home. So, how important is it for people to begin to put your businesses and also store data online, things like the cloud and all that kind of stuff? How has it become more important? And probably the other thing that you might want to address is actually cloud storage is still relatively expensive. So how do we go about going online in terms of our data, in terms of our business?
I think there is 2 aspects to this particular question. One is on the business perspective, but the other one is also on the personal. And there are some relationship, or there's some tie in between the 2. Right? If I start with the personal, some of us may not have a choice but to use cloud storage. A good example of that would be when you buy a new phone, the first thing they're going to ask you is to create an account so that you can store your configuration or your photos or whatever it is in the cloud, right? Sometimes you almost have no choice, especially if you don't know what to do alternatively to that, right? Obviously, you could synchronize that with your laptop and all your data is stored in your laptop, right? But now the question then is, if I store all these data in the cloud, is it accessible by hackers or cyber criminals? Now, these guys, from the cyber criminal space, if you want, they're actually very smart people. In fact, when we did an analysis on many of these people, they are extremely smart people. It's just that sadly, they are using it for all the wrong reasons. A lot of it is because of greed and for themselves, right? So when companies put something like their data into the cloud, they need to be very aware of what they put, because sometimes putting this data into the cloud makes them non-compliant. Like maybe not non-compliant with bank negara, for example, for many of our banking customers or the financial institutions like the insurance companies and so forth, right? But more important than that, the problem with cloud is when you put data in there, a lot of times it's very hard to bring them back, right? It is very sticky if you want. once you start using it, and because it has no limit, you just keep having to pay more and more. And sometimes you don't know how much you have uploaded. You lose some control of that versus putting the data in your own environment, right? But of course, the argument to that is your own environment safer than the cloud? The cloud companies keep saying they are compliant, they are ISO 27001, they are PCI DSS, they have all these standards covered. How about your own environment? So there's always going to be that argument, and that's why a lot of people are a little bit confused and cautious on what to do, right? In fact, there isn't enough clear guidelines from some of the major governing bodies on what we should do, right? So that's why there is no quick answer if you want. Should we go to the cloud? I always advise customers to not go if they're not sure. And that's what Bank Negara also says, right, from that perspective.
All right. Thanks for that. So, I mean, just a little bit more on cloud storage. Just based on your assessment, how safe is cloud storage really? I mean, you touched it briefly, but maybe you could give us a little bit more detail on how safe is it really? Because, I mean, even for myself, my work is on, for example, Google Drive, right? So I've got all my work stuff there. I drop all my PowerPoint slides, my documents in the storage that is given.
Yep.
So, how safe is it, and how what was it called? Susceptible to hackers, things like that.
It's a $1 million question, Joe. There's no way I could say that it is very safe or it's not safe, right? But this is something that I shared with another group of people, and maybe this particular slide will give you a perspective, all right? Just let me show this. This is basically just a set of bubbles, if you want, showing companies who have lost data. Can all of you see this slide?
Yep.
All right. So you see Facebook with 420 million records stolen. Marriott Hotel 383 million. Right. Even British Airways had. In fact, my data was stolen off British Airways a couple of years ago, because I flew to the US via British Airways, and once the data was stolen, within a couple of months, I was getting a lot of spam and scam emails and so forth. So the what I call the findings, if you want, to me, is when you put your valuable data in someone else's hands, when they lose it, you don't know until you start getting attacked. All right. If you keep it in your own environment, it doesn't mean that it won't get attacked, right? The chances of it being stolen is probably less than these big guys, because cyber criminals are greedy people. They will always go after bigger targets, right? It's not that they're not interested in small little targets like us. It's just that they typically go after bigger targets first before they come after the smaller targets. So hopefully that explains some of that. In fact, even like the Malaysian telcos, you see this one down the bottom here, people like Maxis and all that, they have lost a lot of data, right? Including some of our Malaysian banks and so forth.
All right, thanks for that. It is a tough question to answer. I guess there is nothing that is entirely safe or 100% safe or foolproof. But maybe you could give us some handles or guidelines on how to secure the data better. So, I mean, the basic thing we have is a password, and most people forget their passwords. But is there any other way for us to secure our data?
Well, password is an interesting thing, because in Microsoft, we are all talking about going away from password. So we are doing this thing called multi-factor authentication. So that's why you saw one of my slides that talk about two-factor authentication with WhatsApp. So when I saw the directions is that I can do that, immediately I went in there, I turned on the dual-factor authentication. Because security is one of those things whereby you want to make it so hard for the cyber criminal to get your data that this person eventually gives up. He doesn't want your data, right? He goes somewhere else where he can get it easier. All right. So if we talk about putting valuable data, whether it's photos or whatever, into the cloud, right? You need to think of that perspective of how big are they as a target for these people. If they are big targets, then they're always going to be cyber criminals constantly barraging them and trying to find ways to steal stuff. All right. And there are many ways to do that. They go through the aspect of phishing and many ways, right? Ransomware, locking down their system. So the number of different ways that hackers ingeniously come up with to try to steal your data is too many to count. It's what we call a moving goalpost, if you want. From time to time, there's always these weaknesses that is found, people using a loose password. So I always tell people, for protection of passwords, right, you need to think of ways that it cannot be guessed through a dictionary attack. So I started to teach people to use the patterns on their keyboard. But I realized people struggle to remember. That includes myself. So I use patterns on my keyboard in order to come up with very complex combinations, right? So that helps the person to come up with a strong password, all right? But yet, even with a gun pointed to their head, right, they will not be able to review the password verbally. They actually have to look at the keyboard and look at a pattern that they're using, all right? So from that perspective, it then makes it harder for, if you want, a cyber criminal to steal that password, right? But ultimately, because we are part of so many different websites and systems that needs us to have usernames and passwords, ultimately we still write them down, right? And when we write them down, then that's become our single point of failure, right? If a hacker finds this list of usernames and passwords, then game over, if you want, from that perspective. Right? So there's no one way or the other way that's better. It's just how you safeguard these precious information. That's why data today is, like I say, the most valuable resource, right? All our data is worth a lot of money in the dark web, as they call it, right? Truly, one username and password that can open up one user account is worth $1 US. When you have two or more, it goes like that, right? Not linearly to $2 or $3. It just goes up to 10, 100, 1,000, and so forth. Right. So there's many of these interesting things that you learn as you go in to understand how to protect data.
Yeah, thanks for that, Noel. So it starts with passwords, but it goes on to things like
multi-factor
authentication. I think companies like Google, Microsoft, the bigger companies are doing that via a text message on your phone. So that's probably the next way forward. That's quite interesting. I've got a question here. So Noel, you specifically mentioned some Microsoft solutions. So now in this phase of working from home, WFH, right? How do we facilitate this working from home? Do you have any Microsoft solutions or platform that you would recommend for a small business, very small, with maybe about just 2 or 3 staff?
Right. Actually, we do. All right. Windows Server Essentials on the server side, and of course Windows 10 Pro on the client side. Actually, those two alone is enough. Okay, that's most pragmatic, minimalist, if you want, setup. Right. And in terms of cost, depending, like you mentioned, 2-3 machines, that's Windows Server Essentials. Probably excluding the hardware, even 10K, all right, RM is more than enough from a software perspective, right? And depending on the configuration of your hardware, maybe you can get it for 15. So the thing is, it's not just the cost, right? But ultimately is how easy it is to configure it, how easy to set it up, to secure it, and so forth, right? I always emphasize that don't just look at the immediate investment cost, but look at the total cost. Total cost needs to include the support and the people, skills, and so forth. So we found that Windows Server ultimately provides the easiest platform for people to get started with, because Windows Server looks the same as Windows 10, if you want, right?
Okay, so It's Windows Server. So for the one that asked the question, I guess if you're familiar with the Windows platform, Windows Server is just equivalent in terms of the interface, the UI, right? The GUI.
Yes.
I guess it will be more familiar for you. Okay, I've got a question about someone who is, I guess, concerned about his children. So, how do you protect your home internet? When your kids go online and they're playing online games, things like Fortnite, League of Legends. How do you protect yourself? How do you protect your home internet from any attacker? Because essentially you're playing with someone that you don't know. So how do you go about that?
Actually, there is many elements of protection here. All right. One is from the applicant perspective. That means within the game itself, the child is meeting people that they don't know. I think a lot of that is something that I'm very proud of, that SIB is doing a very good job teaching our teenagers, our kids, to be wary of strangers and so forth. Even when you go online, the same applies. Right? It's not about the technology. All right? I believe this is about what our kids learn, right? About God and about how to live with God's truth and all that. Because if they know what is right, they will not fall victim, if you want, to those cyber criminals and so forth online, right? So from a technology perspective, there are multiple things. There's this thing called firewall that I'm sure many of you are aware of. There's also VPN, a virtual private network. Right, so there's some of those technology that is available both software-wise, hardware-wise that you can implement. But from a home setting perspective, right, these technologies are available, and some routers, wireless routers, actually do come with those capabilities already. You can turn them on. You probably need help from some people who know a little bit more from that perspective to help you, right, to turn it on. But apart from that, it's about the individual being vigilant, because one of the biggest threats that I'm actually going to cover even this Saturday when I do my session is, they call it BEC, Business Email Compromise. That's one of the scariest, because more than 50% of people losing their data is through these emails that come in pretending to be coming from the CEO to the finance director or to the accountant, saying, I need to transfer this amount of money to this company. You cannot talk to anyone because this is a very sensitive transaction, blah, 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 blah. And this individual just follows the direction without ringing up and so forth. So we need to teach people that we have to go back to the traditional way of communication. Don't just depend on technology and blame the technology, because ultimately, talk to the person, pick up the phone, ring the person. Doesn't matter where the person is, right? Do the necessary to get the correct verbal confirmation. Don't follow instructions, just the email says so.
All right. Yeah. Thanks for that. Yeah. So, ensure that your business email is not compromised. Yeah, I think that's what's important. So, I guess for the person that asked the question, don't put any of your business type questions in the same PC, data in the same PC that your children are playing their computer games. So this whole area of security. So if there's any, you talked about having a firewall, but we talk about antivirus, and
Yep.
I think nowadays Windows 10 comes with an antivirus for and inbuilt already. But what is the best antivirus software for PC as well as mobile?
We always get questions like that. To be honest here, there's no such thing as best, right? Because it's like a race that is always one better than the other, and this one overtakes the other and so forth. But be assured that the built-in antivirus, anti-malware that comes with Windows 10 Pro called Windows Defender is actually very good compared to many years ago. All right. Now, the question some people ask is, normally free things are not cheap, not good. Right. That's the thinking that they have. But I always believe that if you don't update your system, then even paid ones are not much better. Okay, it's about keeping them updated. Right? That means if you use the built-in and the built-in antivirus, anti-malware is constantly being updated and is scanning the system, it's designed to do what it's supposed to do. But not limited to that. Today, this Windows Defender has a cloud version, right? They call it Windows Defender ATP. So ATP working together with the on-premise version, which is just called Windows Defender, is a very powerful combination. But Windows Defender ATP is a paid service, right? So think of it from that perspective. Are they giving you a free that is substandard versus they make you pay? Actually, there is no truth in that from my perspective, because I look at the Windows Defender today compared to in the past, it's a really, really solid product. But of course, if they compare with some of the paid out there and so forth, it doesn't have this feature, that feature, and so forth, there's always going to be a feature gap, right? As Windows Defender improves, the other one also improves. So it's never, ever ending chasing each other if you want. But ultimately, it's what you do, right? Some people I know like to visit websites that they shouldn't. And they pull down all these malwares and so on. And they keep asking, hey, why did all these strangers ring me? And all this, and start chatting with me on the screen and so forth. I never invited them. The first thing I ask them is, what websites have you been going? And some of these people are reluctant to share, right? Maybe there's something that they don't want to reveal to me. But the point is actually a lot of it rests with us. If we don't go to those shady websites, a lot of times you don't get into those troubles, right? And of course, there are certain emails that we should not open as well, right? Those are scam emails, right, and so forth. Okay, so hopefully that answers some aspect of that question, Joel.
Yeah, I think that is true. It's a very tough question. Everybody wants the best, but I think as technology grows, different companies have different specialties and different things that they come up with, right? So I think it's not a one size fits all solution. Yeah,
correct.
I've got another question here, also regarding security. So with regards to online banking, so if someone uses their online their desktop computer, is it good enough to install the bank's recommended software, such as WebRoot? Sometimes these software would have a conflict with some of the other antivirus softwares. So, is it good to install those software? Would you know anything about this?
I know people who are very specialized in this area, and they probably can give you a much deeper answer to that. My take on this is, if the bank says that you must install a certain app to use their facility, normally I would say, is there an alternative? Can I use a browser instead, right, rather than that specialized app? I tend to gravitate more with the browser than to use the specialized app, because their team that developed that app needs to be very security conscious at all times in order to make sure that that app is somewhat bulletproof, if you want, against cyber attacks and so forth. Browsers are constantly being attacked, and therefore all the browser vendors, whether it's Microsoft or Edge or Chrome by Google, Firefox, for example, they're constantly improving their security, right? Always trying to make sure they're one step ahead of the cyber criminals. But these app authors by the banks or whoever they may be, they may not have enough cyber security skills to constantly bulletproof their application from version to version. So I try not to use any of these apps, whether it's on the phone or whether it's on the PC and so forth, for that purpose. Does that answer your question, Joel?
I believe so. Yeah. So I guess, don't install the app unless it's absolutely necessary, right? Yeah. So
yes.
I guess it's if it's just something that the bank is saying, but otherwise it's not really necessary. Yeah. Okay. Thanks.
The other thing, Joel, to answer that question is, some people I know from the security world, what they do is they set up a separate machine like a secure workstation that's purely used for that online banking. They do not use that machine to serve the internet and all that, right? They have separate machines for that purpose. So the segregation, right, is very clear, right? There's no way to contaminate. It's like quarantine, if you want. The machine that is used for internet purpose is quarantined from the rest of all different kind of usage, right? Whether you're going to a normal website to buy something or whatever. So internet banking is sacred, if you want, from that perspective.
All right. Yeah, thanks for that, Noel. I think I've got just one more last question here. So I think this whole talk, you were talking a lot about Windows, Microsoft kind of products. So I've got this question. I'm not sure if you would know how to answer this, but is it true that Apple products, so for example the iPhones or the MacBooks, they do not require any antivirus software?
Well, the only thing I can say, all right, is although I focus a lot on Microsoft because I've spent many years with Microsoft, is today it's not true that Apple products are immune to threats, right? You could say that maybe once upon a time they were lesser of a threat, but you need to understand the psychology of the cyber criminal. They are going after money, and because of that, they want your data, because your data equals money. So they don't care anymore whether it's an Apple device or a Microsoft device and so forth. They just want money. So if there are a lot of those devices out there, and if you look at the mobile device front, Apple is still either number one or number two. And, you know, between Android and iPhone, they're just chasing each other. So you can be assured that the cyber criminals are going to hack you, going to attack you because you are number one or number two. All right. If you ask a cyber criminal, would you attack a Windows phone that is no longer available? They probably say, Windows what? Phone? Is there such a thing as a Windows phone? They don't care because there's hardly anyone using it anymore. But anything that gives them a broad ability to attack, for sure, they're going to be very gravitated towards that. Right? So that's the mindset you need to always remember. Right? They just want money. They want your data because data equals money. Okay.
All right. Thanks for that, Noel. We are running out of time. Maybe I can pass it over to you for just another minute. For any last comments or just to summarize anything that you've talked about today. Over to you, Noel.
Sure. I just want to do one slide, if anything, just to summarize and close off. Right, it's the message, if you want, of hope. Right, I believe that in this COVID-19 situation that we are all facing, there is a lot of doom and gloom. Right, but I believe there is a lot of hope as well. Right, and start by saying that COVID-19 has been used by cyber threats more than you can imagine. So it's important for us to take stock that we have to be vigilant at all times. And the IT trends tell me that cloud and even this thing called hyper-converge in terms of the technology is the way to go. All right. So when you are able to transform yourself according to Maslow's law in the most bottom two layers, you cannot go wrong. Okay. And of course, the work from home brings us a lot of opportunity, even in terms of how we can use our blessings and talents to help others. Right. So security, data, very precious. And of course, I always focus on having solutions that's cost-effective, secure, reliable, and always with the right kind of performance that our customers require. That's it. Back to you, Joel. Thank you.
All right. Thank you so much for that, Noel. Thank you for explaining all that. I think that's a lot of stuff and also very practical suggestions. So why don't we all give some appreciation to Noel? You can drop him a thumbs up or a clap. You can give him a virtual clap. So thank you, Noel. Thanks again for taking your time to be with us and educating us on this very important part of our business, which is data and storage. So looking forward to hear more from you again, Noel.
Pleasure.
Yeah, thanks again. So next week, we will continue with our Workplace at the River Biz Talk series. Every Thursday, it's going to be at 7 p.m. And next week is someone interesting as well. We've got Andrew Lau. He is the CEO of Teng, the chairman of International Gamification Confederation, GAMFED. And he'll be talking about gamification, leveling up your leadership. So it's a pretty interesting thing, talking about project management, talking about leadership as well, and how does it affect your business? How do you use this to help you in your business? So do sign in even right now after this talk, and it's going to be something very exciting. If you've never heard of this concept of gamification, it is a way to do project management. It's a way to better do project management. Earlier, there was one question about how someone's kids likes to play computer games. So in the same way that the computer games reward you, this is a method of project management that in a way rewards the person, so that they will be able to go on with that project and bring it to completion. So it's something interesting. So do tune in, do log in to our Zoom platform as well, and do sign in on the link on screen. All right. Thank you all for joining us. Do drop your contact details if you'd like to connect with any one of us here at Workplace at the River. You can drop your details. This is like dropping your business card at the end of a networking event. So if you can ask us about anything that you want to know about the business world, even if you'd like to know about specific topics that you may be interested in, do drop your details there. Do feedback to us, and we would like to get in touch with you. And also, if you need any help or any support, or even coaching or mentoring in your business, in your specific area of business, do drop your contact details there, and we would love to get in touch with you. Thank you all for joining us this evening. My name is Joel. I'm part of the team at Workplace at the River, and it's been my pleasure hosting all of you this evening. Look forward to seeing you again next week. Have a good night. Bye-bye.